Private Lender Podcast, Episode 27.
The Private Lender Podcast quote of the day comes to us from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who said, "Many people take no care of their money till they come nearly to the end of it, and others do just the same with their time."
This is the Private Lender Podcast, the show that shares practical advice and know-how for new and seasoned lenders, from private mortgages on single-family houses to joint ventures on commercial projects and beyond. Discover details about investment vehicles that you won't find at your local bank or online broker. Listen and learn from private lenders and real estate investors, as well as from professionals and entrepreneurs, as they share the details, strategies, and the insight that allows for successful and prosperous lending. Now, get ready to increase your ROI. Here's your host, Keith Baker.
Welcome to the Private Lender Podcast, episode 27. I'm your host, Keith Baker, and thank you for joining me today and sharing with me your most precious and valuable asset, that is your time. Today, another solo cast about one of the most frequent questions I receive when I meet with other people at RIA or RIA meetings or other events, and that is, how much money do I need to become a private lender, or how much money do I need to go ahead and get started? And the answer is not as much as you think. But before we get into that answer, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. The Private Lender Podcast is proudly sponsored by the following. The Realty Investment Community of Houston, or Rich Club, is the premier real estate association in Southeast Texas. The Rich Club provides its members with the education, resources, leads, and networking they need to earn more wealth with their real estate investments. The Rich Club has helped thousands of real estate investors realize their full potential, and they are ready to help you. Visit their website at richclub.org for more details. That's richclub.org. 713 Houston Area Real Estate Networking with Landon Rothstein and Ray Sasser. Come out and experience one of the fastest growing meetups of real estate investors. Visit privatelenderpodcast.com/sponsors for more information regarding 713 Houston Area Real Estate Networking Meetup. And now, back to the show. Okay, we're back, and please go to privatelenderpodcast.com/sponsors and show some love and support. Okay, so episode 27. How much money does one need to become a private lender? I know a lot of people are probably thinking, I get a lot, when I interact, I get a lot, I don't have a big IRA, or I don't have a 401k that I can roll over. I've worked at the same company for 10, 15, 20 years, and I can't get that money out. I don't have any other, real savings to facilitate private lending. So if you're in that little boat of you've worked at one company for pretty much your entire career, then, well, God bless you, because that's rare, number one. Number two, ask your HR administrator, whoever handles your 401k, whether or not you're allowed to take an in-service distribution. Very few companies allow this, but some do. And oftentimes it has to be set up when the program is set up. I'm not quite sure if you can retroactively change this, but I know companies such as Verizon, for example, is one that does allow in-service distribution. So if you're an employee of Verizon, you can take out money from your 401k, roll it over into an IRA while you're still employed. That's my understanding, but confirm that. Unfortunately, most of the companies that I've worked for do not allow in-service distribution, so I've had to leave, and that's how I was able to build up my self-directed IRA, is with those 401ks, and that's what has facilitated me in my lending, primarily, most of it. Some cash, but most of it's through the IRA. So check that out, in-service distribution, see if those are allowed. But if you don't have a large sum of cash, or you didn't inherit any cash, or if you're damn near broke, don't let that discourage you. A small amount of money shouldn't prevent you from becoming active and involved, and to get the ball rolling into being a private lender. Now, obviously, the more money you have to lend, the larger your pool of options and projects is going to be. That's almost self-explanatory. But everybody has to start somewhere. And so this is how I like to look at things here. So depending on where you get your research, or where you look on the World Wide Web, because it's all true if it's on the web, right? But the median house value in America is somewhere between $190,000 and $215,000. So for easy math, let's just say that the median house value or house price in America is $200,000. Now, obviously, depending on what part of the country you live in, this is going to differ significantly. one way or the other. So, for example, $200,000 in California, Florida, or New York will probably get you, a very tiny efficiency apartment or condo with a community bathroom. Or it could. Who knows? It could. But if you're in Middle America, say the Midwest or Texas, $200,000 might, not always, but it might just get you into a house that's probably 2,000 square feet or more, and in a decent neighborhood. Not a war zone for sure. So this would lead one to believe that I'm going to need $200,000 to get started, and I can't do anything until I get that $200,000. Not true. Not true. I'm going to go over 2 examples of how I made very small loans to investors, and the return of investment was stellar. Not just in the interest rate, and not just in points, but why you should get started even with a small amount of money. You're going to have to put some work forward. You're going to have to do some work. Like if this was easy, everybody would do it, and there'd be no need for a podcast. This podcast trying to keep you safe and teach people how to do it. But I've made loans for as little as $5,000, $15,000 that were first position liens on properties that my wife would never, never, never live in. They look like houses that I lived in when I was in college and just out of college. But these were profitable nonetheless. So the first loan was on a house in Beaumont, east side of Houston, heavy industrial area, ports, terminals, petrochem, oil. It was a house that was abandoned and needed a lot of work. The structure of the house was good. And the seller lived out of state. It was a son who had inherited the house from his parents. He had long moved on from Texas, from the Beaumont area, lived far up north, and didn't really want anything to do with this house. It's a house he was born in, kind of raised in, and could care less about it. He owed about $5,000 in back taxes to the county, and he was tired of paying the city of Beaumont for the citations that they would issue to him, because the grass would get so high that the city would go and cut it to make it look somewhat reasonable and have some type of curb appeal. And he just wanted to get rid of it. So the investor in this case had done his marketing, contacted this seller, prospective seller, and this in particular investor specialized in owner financing properties to people who weren't bankable or mortgageable, so to speak. So this was his niche. He looked for these types of houses that didn't require a whole lot, and he'd sell them to somebody with owner finance who could fix up the property to themselves. And this is very attractive to people who aren't mortgageable or people who have really crappy credit. So this particular house was worth, its as-is value was about $10,000 or $15,000. As it was, if it went to auction, it wasn't a good, wasn't a good property. ARV, if everything was all fixed up and ready to go, this house could probably get, the comps were supporting $40,000 to $50,000, but it wasn't in a neighborhood where you'd want to go in and put granite countertops or double crown molding or these things, or jacuzzi tubs. But you could get a solid $50,000 working class neighborhood for this house. But I looked at it at the $10,000 to $15,000 as is value. So this $5,000, that was what the seller had agreed to sell to the investor. It represented an LTV, or loan to value, of anywhere between 33 and 50%, which is well below my threshold of 70%. So I agreed to loan the purchase price, and I even got I was sold. I was talked into putting up the closing costs as well. So the total loan was $6,200 at 8% for 3 years, holding a first position lien. That transaction closed. The buyer then turned around and sold the house with owner financing for $33,000 and $3,000 down. The loan was paid as agreed, and there was an added benefit, an added return on investment that I'll speak to in just a few minutes. But it was a successful loan, only $5,000. I did make that out of my self-directed IRA. It was one of the first loans that I had made, and it was successful. And it wasn't a whole lot of money. $5,000 is, especially when it comes to buying houses, is not a whole lot of money. The second loan I want to talk to you about today was for only $15,000. The house was owned free and clear by an investor who was using the house as a rental property, cash flow property. He was renting the house out. It was a small house in a bit of a rough, but it was a stable neighborhood. Again, a good rental market, in that there was virtually no significant appreciation. through the years, but it was steady cash flow near the another industrial area near the ship channel of Houston. And this house, the tenant had moved out just before Harvey. Their lease, I believe it was a 2-year lease they decided to move on. And I want to say they were packing up and moving out as planned, but then Harvey just happened to start raining on them as they were finishing up. So they got lucky there. Good for the tenants. But the as-is value of the house at that time, after Harvey came through and flooded, was about $70,000. Now, Harvey it wasn't 4 feet of water, it was just a couple of inches, but enough to get the drywall, the flooring, and some of the insulation. So after flooded value, the AFV, which is something we've been kicking around here in the Houston area for the last year, was about $70,000 as is. And the after repaired value, the ARV, was in the low 100s. It could be 105 to 110. So this represented an LTV or loan to value of 13 to 20%. First position lead on an income producing property that generally has a low vacancy. So this was pretty much a no-brainer to me. But I still inspected the property myself. I inspected both properties. I always go see and touch and smell all the properties that I like to loan on. I haven't always, but that's my rule now, and I always do. But I just wanted to make sure that these properties weren't a complete mess. And this Harvey house wasn't. It did take on some water. It was a pier and beam foundation, but it wasn't. It was definitely salvageable, and $15,000 was a good deal, especially post Harvey. But this particular investor had cousins that were in trades that could give discounts. I looked at the scope of work, agreed to it, and loaned the $15,000 for 6 months at 10%, but I asked for 2 points up front. So that gave me an effective percentage rate of 7% over the 6 months term of the loan. Again, for the beginner and those who are just starting out, just got to have a few loans, remember that interest rate and the interest you earn is only part of the benefit of being a private lender. And I would suggest it shouldn't be your primary concern. So if you are completely new to this facet of investing, your primary concern should be building your network, which will in time equal your net worth. I know it's cliche and people say it all the time, but it's cliche for a reason, because it's true. Your primary concern should be to surround yourself with successful investors with true proven track records and stellar reputations, because a reputation takes a lifetime to earn and only a few minutes to demolish and burn. So look for those people with proven track records and stellar reputations. Both of these loans that I mentioned, the $5,000 and the $15,000. Oh, hold on. Let me stop right there. The original loan was for $5,000. I agreed to loan $6,200. I keep referring to that loan as the $5,000 loan because that was what I originally agreed to. I was comfortable with loaning that $5,000 to the investor. However, the loan became $6,200, so perhaps I should say $6,200, but this just goes to prove that you don't have to be good at math, people, to be a private lender. You just got to check your work. That's it. Okay, that's all I want to say. We'll get back into the show. Both of these loans that I mentioned, the $5,000 and the $15,000, were first-time loans, the first time I had loaned to these particular investors. The benefit that I brought to the table was that I was able to close fast and help the investors facilitate their business and their deals. Both loans were paid as agreed, and I made money. I didn't get rich. These loans did not allow me to go buy a Rolex or a Ferrari. Sorry, Randy, if you're listening. I know you like Ferraris. But the greatest benefit of these loans was that they provided me with exposure and put me in proximity to two heavy-hitting investors in the greater Houston area, Southeast Texas area. These loans represented just the beginning of relationships that I continue to nurture today. And the fruits of these relationships are as follows. Both of these investors call me frequently to loan on other projects that they're involved in. In fact, one of them, I'm pretty much the first call every time from this particular investor. Now, I don't loan all the time because I get tapped out or the particular property or the project doesn't fit my criteria. But just by making these previous loans, I get asked first. I'm almost first in line. I'm the first position lender, so to speak, which is nice. Another benefit was by making these loans, it paved my way into joining a mastermind with Stephen Kaufman from episode 1. He's the founder of Zeus Mortgage Bank. By being in that mastermind, that brought me even closer to other heavy-hitting investors, but not just a single family, but multifamily and commercial investors. And, I was able to meet them, swap business cards, and it gives me a bit of it gave me a sense of a legitimacy to these people, that I was a serious lender. These loans also introduced me to other potential borrowers and other people that I'm in contact with now, and speaking about doing other business ventures, so other business partners. These loans also helped to put me on the board, to get elected on the board of a local RIA, which was an amazing learning experience being on the board, and also gave me more exposure and more proximity to other investors. And it also helped me to acquire a ton of leather-bound books, which makes me kind of a big deal, like Ron Burgundy. Sorry, that was a very cheesy Anchorman quote, but whoever's listening, you know who that's for. So the point being in all this is don't let a small stack of cash deter you from getting out there and taking action. If it was easy, anybody could do it. And there is no such thing as truly passive investing. Maybe there is, but I haven't found it. But everything takes work. And if you're not willing to put in the work, then you might as well stop listening to this podcast right now and unsubscribe. It doesn't take as much work as being a flipper, but it does take work. Building your network takes work. Building your net worth is going to take work. And this is just but one way you can do it. It's the way that I was able to get into these circles without having a ton of experience of landlording or flipping. And it puts me in touch with a lot of different people. So I would highly recommend to you right now, whether you have, even if you only have $2,000, go find somebody who needs that $2,000, right? Maybe it's for an air conditioner or some type of repair, an emergency repair. If you're in close proximity to people and you can act fast, they're going to remember that. And that's going to start to build your reputation as a lender and as a serious player, investor in the market. If you've got the $200,000 to $300,000 to $500,000, God bless you, first and foremost. But that's going to open up much greater opportunity for you. You can get into multifamily syndications or commercial syndications with a couple of $100,000. Or you can get into more luxurious homes. I would be careful. Luxurious homes are nice, and they're beautiful. However, the more the value of a home, the higher the value of a home, the more finicky the end buyer is going to be, number one. Number two, you're going to have fewer people that are going to be able to afford that house. So your pool of potential buyers, or your investors pool, let's say if they're a flipper or even a landlord, a nice $100,000 to $200,000 home is a good breadbasket home. You get into the $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, you don't have as many people that can qualify for those loans as you do for the houses between $100,000 and $200,000. So if you're going to go big in the luxury, I would just caution you, be careful, because the holding costs of those homes are significantly high. 10% of $100,000 is $10,000. 10% of $600,000 is $60,000. So if your holding costs can really eat you up, or eat your investors' money up, and which is your money. So just be careful. I'll do another episode on luxury homes in the future. But for the time being, the point of this show is just to get people to get it through your head, to change your mindset a little bit, that you don't need a whole lot of money. You don't have a whole lot of options, so you'll have to pick and choose, but that's fine. Everyone has to start somewhere. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you found some value in it. I want to remind everybody that on August 25th and 26th, 2018, I'll be in Dallas at the Quest IRA, Self-Directed IRA Expo. I'll have a booth. Come on out and say hi. And I highly recommend you go. It's going to be a great expo. I've seen the topics and who's speaking. There's going to be a ton of smart people and a ton of knowledge there. And if you go, when you register for your tickets, use the promo code Baker Expo for 25% off. That's right, 25% off. And I hope to see everybody there. And I have one favor to ask. Please, if you enjoy any part of this show or got any value, please go to iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a rating and review. I would love a 5-star review, but honestly, just leave me an honest review. If you think I suck, tell me. That's fine. But please leave a rating and review. The more ratings and review this podcast gets, the higher up in the rankings it goes, and the more people we can touch and educate and answer questions for. So that's the main goal, is to spread the word as much as possible. All right. That's going to do it for me today, episode 27. I wish you a good week, healthy, happy, and prosperous investing. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Private Lender Podcast with your host, Keith Baker. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit privatelenderpodcast.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time.